Nearly 100 years ago, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the nation of Germany formally signed the armistice, officially ending hostilities in World War I. The following year, on November 11, 1919, President Woodrow Wilson declared that day to be Armistice Day, in honor of those men and those women who had served. Today, on what is now known as Veterans Day, America gathers in solemn tribute and joyous celebration to the men and women who serve in its military. In this edition, we look at one special soldier, a soldier who was lost to his nation for over 61 years, returned over Veterans Day weekend. Thank you for joining us in First in the West. Welcome to this special edition of First in the West. Our focus today is on a soldier, Sergeant First Class Benny Don Rogers, a member of the famed Lost Battalion in what was known as the Forgotten War, the Korean War, was returned to his family after 61 years over this Veterans Day weekend. And a Division West soldier, Captain Adrian Vasquez, had the solemn duty to serve as the Casualty Assistance Officer for this operation. Captain Vasquez, 61 years is a long time for a family to not know what happened to their loved one. Can you tell me what was the sense the family had when the remains of Sergeant Rogers were finally returned?
Well, ironically, in this situation, it was a joyous moment for the family. It provided closure for the family, being that it's been 61 years. Since he's been missing. They assumed that he was dead, but when she got the phone call in March, it kind of solidified that and added that necessary closure for the family. Benny was buried right next to his mother and father, brother and sister, so he has, rejoined his family, but it did add that closure that the family needed.
Captain Vasquez, can you give us a sense of the imagery that we're seeing here with the return of Sergeant First Class Rogers?
Well, early morning on November 10th, we arrived at the airport, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport in Dallas, to participate in the plainside service for Sergeant First Class Rogers. Upon completing that, we went down to Athens in a motorcade. Of note, it was widely supported by the local communities and the local law enforcement for every single one of the various districts and jurisdictions on the way down there. And then finally we capped off the weekend with his interment service, which was supported by members of the 3/8 Cavalry who were part of Benny's unit when he was deployed in the Korean conflict. In addition to that, on November 12th, that same afternoon, the 3/8 Cavalry redeployed from combat operations in Iraq. So it was really significant, and symbolic to know that one of their fallen from 61 years earlier were put to, laid to rest the same afternoon that they came back from Iraq. So, coincidence? I think not. It was just a good day.
Thank you. And now Sergeant First Class Gary Stacy with more on the return of a fallen hero.
61 years is a long span of time to be missing. Yet honoring our fallen who have given their lives is timeless. Those gathered together at Dallas-Fort Worth just one day prior to Veterans Day stood as one to remember this soldier who was coming home. Some felt drawn to be there.
Years ago, I made a mistake by getting out of the service. Part of my family is military, and I grew up in the 60s when Vietnam was going on, and I saw how the service people were treated then. And it's just my way of showing that we're not like that.
For others, such as immediate family members, their soldier's return was more personal.
I'm just so proud that my family is now completely home.
A police escort was provided to accompany Sergeant Benny Don Rogers and his family as they made the trip to Athens, Texas, near the area where Sergeant Rogers was born, a farming community just over 100 miles southeast of Dallas. Sergeant Rogers joined the Army in 1947 and following his training was assigned to the 101st Airborne out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He re-enlisted in 1950 and later that year his unit, the 3rd of the 8th Cavalry, deployed to Korea. The funeral service took place at Willow Springs Baptist Church the day after Veterans Day. Rogers' loyalty to his family and service to country were duly noted.
Uncle Benny, it was an endearment used by our family fondly and often in the Rogers household for as long as any of us can remember. As children, we heard the story of what happened in Korea in 1950. We knew the meaning of missing in action from an early age.
It's Benny's last letter home.
The last letter his family received from him, dated October 30th, 1950, was read aloud by his nephew and namesake, Benny Don Whirley.
Now for Jack, glad to hear he's making $1 million. I want to help him spend it. And tell him I don't think it will be necessary for him to come over here, because I've done enough mountain climbing and hole digging for the both of us.
That was the last time they heard from their son. His unit was ambushed by 2 divisions of the Chinese Army, and 600 of the original 800 soldiers were lost. Among them, Sergeant First Class Benny Don Rogers. The show of support for Rogers and his family was strong and included a number of individuals from public and private organizations. On the way to the cemetery, that support was palpable. Chaplain Thomas Holmes offered thoughtful graveside remarks.
1st Cavalry Division has a motto: live the legend. Sergeant First Class Benny Rogers is the legend.
Ready. Aim. Fire. Ready. Aim. Fire. Face. Preset. Arms.
She would have been real happy because she was so sure that he was going to come back. Even when she died, just before she died, she was still sure he was going to come back. And he has. She had faith. The good Lord has done this.
Captain Vasquez, who had worked so closely with the immediate families, was also reflective.
There were 600 casualties inflicted on the battalion out of 800 men, and 200 of those soldiers have yet to return home. So we're very fortunate, the family's very fortunate to have had Benny return home. But just know that it's very comforting as a soldier to know that when you make a pledge to serve your country and you do fall, you will not be forgotten. And even if it takes 61 years like it did for Benny, we'll get you home.
Having a sense of closure is necessary, and this is now possible for everyone who was close to the young man they knew as Benny Don.
Glad he's home.
I am too.
Have a nice day, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Sergeant First Class Gary Stacy, near Athens, Texas, reporting for First in the West.
So what is Veterans Day? Veterans Day is Sergeant First Class Benny Don Rogers and his family, friends, and comrades in arms. As we close out this edition of First in the West, let's reflect upon the words of President Woodrow Wilson as he proclaimed November 11th Armistice Day. To us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in this country's service and with gratitude for that victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the Council of Nations. That's it for this edition. We'll see you again next week.